You're listening to the Martin Clinic Wellness Podcast. This is the show where we bring you the best tips, tricks, and nutritional hacks to help you and your family get healthier. You will also hear what works and doesn't work, so you don't have to waste your time and money. All right, let's get started. Hello, my name is Dr. Tony Martin Jr., and I'm here with my dad, Dr. Tony Martin Sr. of the Martin Clinic. And we want to, again, thank you for joining us today on this episode. Today we're going to really, this would be part two of, something we talked about in our last episode. So if you haven't heard that one, after this one's done, go ahead and, go listen to that last podcast that we did. And you can find that on our website, or you can find that on iTunes. And again, if you, if you don't subscribe to us on iTunes, then we would ask you to go ahead and subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you haven't left us a review, we would really appreciate it if you would leave us an honest review on iTunes. That would really help us out. It helps us get our show out there to more people. So we would really appreciate that. So again, what we want to talk about today is really the foods that you want to eat that will have minimal effect on your insulin levels. Now, just to recap, last week, we really wanted you to start to look at the foods that you're eating and the effect that that food has on your insulin levels. That's, first and foremost. If you can get in the habit of saying, will this food, really hurt my insulin levels, or will it be okay with my insulin levels? If you can get in the habit of doing that, then you're going to be much, much better off down the road. And that's with the idea of in the last podcast, we gave you all the foods that just kill your insulin. And since our last episode, we talked about, for example, yogurt. And, how yogurt is, one of the worst foods that you can eat when it comes to raising insulin levels. Yet a lot of people eat yogurt every day because it's a health food.
And they start their day that way.
They come
worst
out of
thing they can do.
They're in a, they come out of, they're sleeping at night. They've entered into a little bit of mild ketosis. They're burning fat for energy, and they get up and they have a little bit of yogurt, and instantly they start to make a lot of insulin, and then that fat burning shuts right off. You produce a lot of insulin, and then the cascade effect. So it was interesting. So again, if you haven't heard that podcast, and we encourage you after this one's done, go and get that other one. So today we want to, again, as we mentioned, we're going to flip the coin over a little bit, and we're going to talk about some foods that that would be congruent with weight loss in a sense. They would have minimal effects on your insulin levels, and they would help you feel full longer, and they are highly nutrient dense foods. So they got a lot of nutrients per calorie. Basically so these are the foods that we like. And again, a lot of this information is out there all over the internet. We just kind of put it together for a lot of people. One of the places that has a lot of this information is a guy that runs something called Optimizing Nutrition. So, a lot of this information is out there, but we just want to bring it all together for you. So, on that note, if you are insulin resistant, actual insulin resistance, then we recommend ketogenic, which is a very low carbohydrate, high fat diet. I'll just get that out of the wrap because we're not talking about that necessarily today. We're talking about foods that have lower effective insulin. But if you are, type 2 diabetic, if you are insulin resistant, then we would recommend for a period of time anyways, to get that a little bit more under control, going low carb. That's just no question by far the best way to eat for that. All right.
Everything.
For everything. So let's get going on this a little bit, and we'll talk about some of the foods that, that are better choices. If you're going to eat carbohydrates, which one should you be eating?
Okay.
We'll talk about that a little bit. Now, of course, some of the most nutrients dense foods, and also the least amount of insulin produced after, are vegetables. A lot of vegetables are like that. Celery and, a lot of those vegetables. So
I love celery.
A lot of vegetables
broccoli
are high on that list, right? So that goes without saying. Most people would understand that. Most people would know that eating vegetables is never a bad thing. It's not going to, people don't get diabetes by eating vegetables.
Yeah.
That's a fact, right? So, I mean, we don't have to spend too much time on that. Let's talk about some fruits now. Fruit is we get this question a lot of times, right? Should I eat fruit? Well, listen, fruit is good for you. There's no question fruit is good for you. But you got to remember, we live in a day and a time now where fruit is not our main source of carbohydrates anymore.
Yeah, plus the fact that we're consuming 26 to 52 teaspoons of sugar a day. I mean, you have Campbell's tomato soup, you got a lot of sugar in it, right? So the world has changed, right? So like you say, we're not getting, our carbohydrates from fruit mostly. But the other factor too for fruit, and it goes along with insulin, is uric acid, because I call them God's candies. Some people cannot have a lot of fruit.
No, and they didn't start that way.
They didn't start that way, but they are now, right?
Right? And uric acid is a sign of insulin, right? And again, we talk about this a lot, but insulin resistance or insulin issue shows up differently in everybody. In everybody. Some people gain weight when they're insulin resistant, but there are a lot of thin people that are insulin resistant because they got high blood pressure.
Yeah.
Or their ankles swell.
Uric acid. A lot of times, right?
Right? I mean, so those are all kind of indications that somebody's insulin is whacked a little bit. So when it comes to fruit, it's not the apple that you have as a snack that's the problem. It's the 55% of the diet coming from carbohydrates, eating a lot of sugar and eating the fruit.
Yeah.
And if you are a diabetic, if you are insulin resistant, then yes, the carbohydrates and the sugar from fruit matters. It matters. You will have issues with your insulin, and your diabetes will get worse unless you first correct the underlying problem, which is insulin resistance. And unfortunately, while you're doing that, you have to eat low insulinogenic fruits, and that's what we're going to talk about. On that list of low insulinogenic fruits, of course, all the berries. Berries are very low carb. So if somebody even is eating a ketogenic type diet, they can eat some berries.
They can have some strawberries.
Some raspberries and all that, right? Yeah. We know that's already out there. But there are other ones that are also, if you are like not insulin resistant and you are looking for foods as carbohydrate fruits to eat that won't have a big effect on your insulin and that are also highly nutrient dense foods, then cherries are on that list.
Yeah, I love cherries.
Apples, same thing. Apples are a low insulinogenic food. They got more carbohydrates on it, so they'll take you out of ketosis. But if you're looking for a fruit to eat that has a fairly low insulinogenic effect compared to a lot of the other things out there, then it's not, that's not bad, and it's a nutrient dense food. On that list again, we talked about berries, pears are on that would be on that list. Even oranges. Again, if you're diabetic, no. But if you're looking for foods and you're not insulin resistant, then that's a good choice of one as well. Now let's get into the one that we get asked all the time, which is grains and wheats and all those kind of things, right? Just like anything else, there are more grains that are bad for you than good. But there are a few that are not that they're good for you. They just have a less... If you're looking to eat a grain that has less of an effect on your insulin levels, then these are the grains that you're going to want to look for. Doesn't mean eat them all the time because they're still going to secrete insulin. So I got to make that clear. Yeah. But they are a better choice when it comes to insulin effect. So let's talk about that. One is oatmeal. Oatmeal is low. It has a less of an effect on insulin. It's actually on. I saw a list of the most or least insulinogenic type of foods, and it's on the list. So oatmeal is a good choice for sure. Oat bran is another one. Oat bran is a low, and rye bread, and then wheat bran would be another one. So those are a couple things to kind of look out for that. Now, of course, we already know all the animal products and seafood and all that are already those types of foods that are very have a low effect. In a sense,
on insulin, yeah.
on insulin, right? Now, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, you've seen, in your practice, day in and day out, the effect that food has on, people's health, right? We wrote a newsletter, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, we've written a newsletter in the past where, if you are not well, one of the first questions that your doctor should ask you is, what are you eating? Because there is nothing that a person does more in a daytime that has an effect on their health than the foods that they eat. So if your doctor's not asking you what you're eating, he or she is only getting a very, very, very small part of the equation.
Yeah.
They're not looking in the right places. So you see the effect of food every day on people.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, you've said this before, too many carbohydrates.
Yeah. Well, look, you come down to simplifying it for people, right? You see, my goal in my office, you know what the term doctor means? It means teacher, right? So I'm trying to teach my patients Nutrition 101 so that they understand, they don't need a PhD in nutrition. They just need to, have a few things explained to them. And I'm big on keeping my patients accountable to certain things and getting them to be very much involved in their own health and, control what you can control. And I said, when you get good at it, you'll preach it to everybody else around you. You'll become passionate. And I have thousands of patients that are passionate about their health. They went from being unwell to being well, and they want to stay well. They want their kids to be well. They want their family, their loved ones, their friends to be well. And so we have a lot of little disciples running around in North America because of the internet and everything that we can do today and different radio shows in different places and this kind of thing. But it's so great to see people start with an understanding saying, look, if I can help you in one thing, I'm going to get you to look, I do it with everybody. I don't care who comes in. I always explain to them insulin because it's the death hormone. It's the growth hormone. It's the inflammation hormone. It's the silent hormone that you cannot see that will kill you. It's going to cause cancer. It's going to cause cardiovascular disease. It's going to cause high blood pressure. It's going to cause joint pain. It's going to cause Alzheimer's. It's going to cause dementia. It's going to, you know what I mean? So if I already know that to be the answer, right? If you're not feeling well, one thing you can help is what you put in your mouth. So if you understand that, and look, it takes some, you got to work at it. It takes some habits. Is there anything that happens in life without discipline? Nothing. Nothing good happens without discipline. I'm big on discipline, right? I tell my patient, look, if you were coming here to get a pill, I just give you a pill, go home, take the pill, you're going to be good. I don't do that. I want you to get involved in your health. You're going to start to establish changes in your own life. Don't do it with somebody else. Do it with you first. And if you do nothing else, start understanding how your body works. And that little organ in your body, that pancreas, man, oh man. Well, we've overused it, right? It's just because we've gone and I love listening to your seminars and things we've done. And, you've come up with, you coined a phrase, disease, sickness without a fever, right? Like that is so profound because today we have, people don't die of diphtheria. The Zika virus. It drives me insane.
Yeah, that could be a podcast episode.
Well, you know what? It's just because I'll give you an example of what I mean. Obama asked for $1 billion, a billion with a B, to fight the Zika virus. Now, that hasn't killed one person. Nobody's died yet. Now, I'm not saying that
they're not. Yeah, and there's so much controversy on whether or not that's even a. Zika's been around for a long time.
It's been around a long time, and now it's a big thing. Is Zika? Don't go to Miami. Don't go on a cruise.
It's because
don't go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
There was athletes, imagine.
That were scared of the Zika. But again, we saw the same thing with the swine flu, right? People were lined up around the block at all these places to get a vaccine for the swine flu. I mean, it's just, this is how public health works.
Yeah, and it's
fear.
It's fear.
Right?
And
money for a vaccine and fear again and get vaccinated and let's move on to the next thing now.
Yeah.
Right?
And there'll be something else next month.
Just last year, we're worried about another virus coming into North America. Right, we were worried about, that was a big news story last year, and that was
what was it? Ebola.
The Ebola. That's.
Do you know how much money they spent on Ebola?
So they were worried about Ebola because see that this thing, and then a pharmaceutical company, they get all the money in the world for research, so they can, and it's always a vaccine. Medicine today is a vaccine. No. It's a drug and a vaccine. That's what it is. So it's like, let's create a problem. And we're not downplaying. There are problems in this world. But let's create a problem. Let's really make it's the end of the world. And then we're going to get all the funding we want. And then we're going to get a vaccine. And the problem with anything else like that, it's always rushed. It's out fast. Proper testing isn't done. They're not testing what happens if you get this vaccine and 50-something other shots of other things. And that's the end result of that. Yeah. So it is.
And plus, it takes away the emphasis, right? At the end of the day, the answer to the vast majority of your health problems, the answer to it is right in front of us. It's in front of us. Well, it's the food that we eat.
The funny thing is that people got terrified over Ebola. They worried about dying of Ebola. I mean, they're going to win the Powerball before that happens. But they're not worried about something that affects 1 in 3 people, which is type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
1 in 3 people will die with type 2 diabetes. That's 1 in 3. So if you're sitting here listening and you're in a car, look to your right and left. 1 of the 3 of you is going to have type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
And that's a fact, and we're not worried about that. No. We're worried about the Zika virus. We're worried about Ebola. And yet these are the things that will affect our health. If you have type 2 diabetes and you don't fix it, it doesn't end well. There are 20 amputations a day. Every day now because of, and that's not worldwide. It doesn't end well. You're going to get a limb amputated. Your eyesight's going to go away.
Your kidneys are going to stop.
Your mobility
your heart, you're going to have a heart attack.
It doesn't end well.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It drives me crazy because the answer's in front of us. The answer's in front of us, and we don't emphasize it. And that's why, like for me, and I say this all the time, that I love the idea of the media today that we have, the social media, that we can go and have a podcast. We can talk about it on Facebook. We can do it. And you know what? There's some people that are not interested, but I found this to be just generally true. Most people, not everybody, but most people are very interested when you give them information. They love it. Oh, I didn't know that. I can help myself. Absolutely you can help yourself. You want to be healthy? If you don't have your health, you don't have too much. I don't care. You can have all the money in the universe, but if you don't, people put all their eggs in the basket. I'm going to invest, but they don't invest in their health.
No, and that's the thing. It's an investment. Every dollar you spend on your health, you're not looking for immediate return on investment necessarily. It's that long-term investment that you put into your health.
Yeah.
And, people get funny about spending money on their health. But, that's one area where you should be investing some time and energy and money into your health. No question. Again,
you'll reap what you sow. It's just like everything else in life. You'll reap what you sow.
100%. And a lot of times, unfortunately, what you reap is a lot worse than you sow.
Yeah.
Right? It's an unfortunate thing. But, all right, so we're pretty much right out of time again. So, again, the big takeaway from this episode here is that people, two trains of thought. Some people say there's no such thing as good or bad food. It just depends on how many calories you eat. And as long as you stay below that calorie count, there's no such thing as good or bad food. That's fairy tale. because we see it in a clinical aspect, there are some foods that will absolutely, if you eat them over a period of time consistently, they're going to mess up your hormones, they're going to make you quite sick. Yeah. So what we wanted to do, again, the takeaway from this episode here is there are some foods out there that are definitely better choices. And if you're gonna have a carbohydrate, then choose a carbohydrate that has less of an effect on your insulin levels, because those foods are generally better for your health, and they're going to do a lot more for your future health, but also they will help you a lot more also in terms of your goals of weight loss and all those things associated with that. So again, we want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you have any questions or any feedback, you can email us at info@martinclinic.com, or be sure to, again, leave us a review on iTunes. We would really appreciate that. And again, we want to really thank you for listening. Have a great day. You've been listening to the Martin Clinic Wellness Podcast, brought to you by martinclinic.com. We are truly thankful that you took the time out of your busy day to listen. Talk soon.